Greetings ladies and mental gents, and welcome to my channel, where I like to make audio narrations of various stories from the internet. In this video, we'll be focusing on a story from the subreddit HFY, called Freedom from Fate, written by Regal Legal Eagle. The description will contain the link to the original, and, as always, I hope that you enjoy. You sure you do not require our protection any longer tonight, warlord? You dispatched the last of the temple guard. If there were any left, they'd be running for their lives. Go, join the army in the city. Loot and pillage. You deserve it. The man cloaked in the large bear fur nodded at the man to his left, he pressing his fist to his heart. The man returned the gesture and turned his horse, spurring it on as the entire honor guard pulled back from their leader, heading back down the mountain towards the city below. Smoke was rising as his horde began to claim the spoils of victory. Some had set orders, however, as he would not let his army collapse into debauchery. He'd keep them focused on the campaign ahead. This was only the first of many great elven cities. But he took his eyes from the city now, staring up at the temple as he nudged his horse with his knees to get him moving forward once more. The elves had the ability to create great structures beyond anything that the people had ever seen. They made massive arches that seemed to defy gravity, grand structures of gold that appeared nearly fresh, and even massive windows of colored glass that filtered the very light in the sun itself. He would make sure none of it remained by the time he was done. He led his horse through the courtyard, past the fountains of bubbling water, and up the massive stone steps of marble that had been worn smooth by centuries of elven pilgrims attending the temple. He could see the massive statue just inside, overlooking the city below with pools of blackish water at the feet of the massive elf. Slowly, he dismounted, feeling the strain of the chest for a moment as he did. Quickly, he pulled the silk cloth from his belt, coughing into it, his chest shaking as he let out a rasping, heavy cough, one hand clutching the horse for support. After a moment, it was over, and he tossed the blood-soaked silk to the ground. You're not as big as the story says. He turned and saw the elven woman slip around the pillars in the temple. Her body was flawless in ways that only elves could be. The curves of her body seemed to be designed by an artist. The fullness of her lips spoke of luxury and opulence, the silk robes covering her body, given just enough to his imagination to make him crave what flesh was beneath. He drew his sword, which rustled and chipped, and it looked like a well-placed strike might have reduced it to pieces, but it had yet to fail him. His men used the finest swords human blacksmiths could make, but he preferred this, the sword that he'd pried from the skeleton of a long-dead nobody. Of course I'm not. Your people would rather believe that I'm 12 feet tall and breathe fire. It makes it seem more believable than a horde of humans is crushing the mightiest of armies. The elf glanced away at that before slowly walking forward, waving a hand towards the statue on the black pose. Do you know where you are? No, the great warlord Bearslayer wanders his horde around the land at random. I mean, this temple. The grand temple that overlooks the city. The temple that is the cornerstone of your entire faith and the jewel of your god's eye. I wasn't aware of it. Enlighten me. The elf priestess scowled. Is there nothing that you'll take seriously, human? It is you who should take me seriously, priestess. I have crushed your armies, killed your battle mages, and destroyed your war golems. All with a bunch of barbarians who'd never seen a stone house before I led them into your lands. He hunched over a little suddenly, pulling another silk cloth from his belt, and he coughed into it, the same raspy wheezing in his chest. He was done after only 20 seconds this time, before he straightened up, keeping the silk in his hand this time. Ah, yes, your infection, a curse from the gods. I seriously doubt that. People are born sick quite often all on their own. We could cure that, you know, if you let my sisters return to the temple and work our magic. I think you're going to tell me something about the temple. She paused for a moment, lips pressed together in annoyance, before she tried to smile and return to her original speech. You stand before the statue of Rune, the god of fate and destiny. He has led our people for over 1,000 years. He has made us strong, powerful, wealthy, and far more advanced than any other nations built by the children of the gods. The elves are truly favored in this, which is why my army is looting and pillaging your city right now." She glared at the human. His shoulders looked slumped beneath the massive bear coat that he wore, and, unlike his men, he wore no armor, or it would put pressure on his chest, which he couldn't allow. The simple cloth shirt and pants he wore looked more fitting for some sort of sheepherder, but not a grand warlord. Clearly, we have displeased our god somehow, but these fools are likely why you are here. It is no surprise to me that you're familiar with these waters. Is that not why you came here alone? To see your fate? But did the stories you hear inform you that only the high priestess could bring you the darkness to the light? Yes, and you're her. To be honest, I had expected to have to hunt you down. I was bid by my god to remain here. He has a new path in mind for me." She moved to the edge of the black pools at the feet of the massive gold statue, sinking her knees as she began to move her arms in some sort of meaningful pattern, chanting slowly, "Great and powerful Arvoon, show us the gift of foresight. Let me view the destiny of this great warlord." The black water suddenly shimmered and began to show images. The warlord looked down at the pool, seeing him at the front of his army, heroically leading them into battle, into sacking cities and raiding treasures. He saw them crossing the green sea and raiding the lands of the dwarves, minotaurs, and trolls. He saw the return of the great ships laden with treasure from these lands before he had built a new empire and sat upon a mighty throne of gold and jewels. There is your destiny, human. Arvoon has chosen you now. Ye shall lead you to... She couldn't finish the word as he drove the sword point down in a slight angle through her shoulder and neck. It would pierce her heart before he pulled the sword back out, shoving her body into the pools. Her blood seeped onto it, and the water images ceased. Even the blackness was gone. Now it was simply water flowing with blood. The warlord wiped his blade off on the silk cloth before tossing the cloth onto the dead body of the high priestess. "Is that the best you got?" he bellowed at the statue, slowly shaking his head, and sheathed his sword and turned to look over the city below, waving a hand at it. "I've done all of this without you. You think I'd suddenly relinquish control to a frickin' god?" He had to quickly pull another cloth from his belt as he nearly doubled over as he coughed and wheezed, one hand clutching his chest and the other held the cloth to his mouth. When it was over, he groaned, stumbling forward, before sitting heavily on the stone bench in the opening of the temple. "I used to think that you had cursed me," and glanced at the statue. "When I was born of Throgan the Great and Rika the Merciless, they expected me to be the strongest, largest warrior of all the wastes, the leader to my clan, not just my tribe. But instead, I was born sickly, thin, and weak in comparison to others. Not only that, I thought that you made me tall and a greater weakness without the strength to back it up. When my parents disowned me and tossed me into the wastes to die, so that I would not shame their bloodline, I cursed you. I thought that you had feared what I would become and cursed me to failure." He took a heavy, slow breath, swallowing down the need to cough further. "When the despair that I now wear came upon me, I was about to accept my fate, when instead I found a long-dead man. Who? I have no idea. He bore nothing of note to his name or blood, just an old sword stuck to his ribs. I pulled the sword free and killed the bear, despite how it towered over me." He slowly sighed as he thought back. "Then, because I was sure that you had corrupted the hearts when I brought the skin back to the tribe as proof of my skill, I killed my mother and father, and I swore that I would never let you stop me. I united my tribe, then my clan, and then all of the clans and the wastes. I thought my power was defying you, in making sure that the god of fate was wrong about me." He began to laugh then, a deep and rasping as he finished a few light coughs. "How wrong I was. When I led the horde into your lands, I finally understood. There was no host waiting for me at first, no grand army of the empire to fight. It took time for them to prepare, as there was no warning. I heard the rumors of the cloud of pools, how their general suddenly couldn't see the future, leaving them entirely unprepared for me. For a moment, I thought it was my heresy that gave me strength, the fact that I no longer believed in your power over me. He shook his head once more. Then I realized the truth. It didn't matter if I believed in you or not. You didn't believe in me. He glanced up at the massive statue. Elves, dwarves, trolls, minotaur, centaur, even the fae and the orcs, all creatures of gods. You all bicker and vie for power and your chosen creations. But humans don't have a god of their own. We live in the wastes and shunned territory, ignored by you and your feuding brothers and sisters. Who made us? No one. This is why you have no power over me. Well, not your magic. Believing in fate and destiny is a control of its own. If you tell any creature of God that they have a fate chosen for them, they will accept it as truth, for they were made to do so. I thought that I also had a fate, but now I know that that isn't true. None of the gods control us. None of you believed in us. What could a bunch of wandering humans in the wastes do to your mighty empires, to your magic and power? He chuckled once more as he thought of the irony. He pointed out to the city. You see those fires, O great God? You might think them random, but do not spread those fires. Those are the scrolls, books, maps, and paintings, tapestries, and history of your chosen people. I'm wiping them from the land. Your historians are being put to the sword even now. Your craftsmen slaughtered. Your artists will be reduced to slaves. Your architects reduced to laborers. I will soon ride upon the remaining cities of this continent, and they will suffer the same fate. He nodded slowly as he thought it over. Once this continent is mine to control, I will not cross the Great Sea and unite the other creatures of the gods against me. I will instead dismantle every structure that remains here. They will be pulled down brick by brick, stone by stone. I will melt them down, your statues, and crush your colored glass, and ensure that there is no trace of this empire. Then I will lead my people back into the wastes. He grinned as he glanced up at the statue. You might wonder why I would do this. You have to wonder because you can't see inside my head. You might believe in my power now, but it's far too late for you to do anything about it. I do this to free my people from the only power you hold over us, fate. You can't control our lives, our destiny, any more than I can control the weather. But if people believe you can, then you can manipulate them. He shook his head once more. If I destroy your history, not because I want to spite the owls, but so that I can free my own people, I will not build a new empire on the ashes of yours, because even then it will have been shaped by your past. I shall lead the humans back into the wastes, knowing that upon my death the clans will splinter and bicker and fight. It will likely be hundreds of years before anyone strong enough to unite them returns. I will likely be a myth, if I'm remembered at all. Perhaps they will speak of me as a giant who crushed the armies with my hands, rather than simply being a far better tactician and strategist than those pathetic elven generals. He pointed up at the statue then. Your brothers and sisters will not mourn you. They will divide your fallen power, and their children will cross the sea and shall fight for the resources and territory. Why bother trying to reclaim the continent that destroyed the mightiest empire the world has ever seen? He grinned. When humans finally emerge from the wastes once more, there will be no god of fate, no destiny set upon them. They will be free. Nothing but their own actions shall determine their course. When we build our own cities, it'll be with our own hands, using our own designs. And you can try warn your brothers and sisters, but I know that they won't believe in us any more than you did until it's too late. They created their children, so how could these pathetic creatures of the wastes bring them low? They will learn too late of our power. We decide our own destiny. We forge our own path. The warlord rose then, walking back to the horse, and he mounted it and turned around to face the city. Then the human looked back up at the statue behind him once more. I will leave this temple untouched until I have crushed the rest of your cities. When I return, it'll be with your people in chains, to make them dismantle this temple and melt you down. I won't use the gold to make anything. I'll have it formed into bricks and then tossed into the ocean to never be seen again. For you are the greatest enemy humanity could ever have. And with the death of fate, I give my people freedom. Greatest gift that I could ever bestow upon them. A gift taken from a god by a man who was left to die in the wastes. He nudged his horse forward, leaving the temple behind him, and began his trek back down to the city. End of story. If you enjoyed this story and wish to support the author, the link is down below. If you would like to support this channel, there are numerous ways to do so. They will also be listed in the description down below. But the easiest way to help this channel is to share it, subscribe, and like. And, as always, I will see you all in the next video, and I hope that you have a good one. Cheers!